So Daredevil becoming a villain during Shadowland was amazing. I loved this story. I don't care what anybody says. And so what this does is this initially opens up with Bullseye. Now it is important to specify this takes place after the events of Dark Reign, where basically all the villains replaced the Avengers. It was so cool. It was a phenomenal story. We'll probably start covering that next week. So the cool thing about this is that with Bullseye being carted off after the defeat of Norman Osborn, when Bullseye was part of Dark Reign, he was the basically villainous version of Hawkeye. The funny thing he does here is in talking to the guards, he starts talking about how the Sentry is coming back and the Sentry is going to kill everybody. Now the reason why this is being referenced is that during Dark Reign, Norman Osborn was the only one who could keep the Sentry in check. Yes, the Green Goblin, Norman Osborn, he was the only one to keep the Sentry in check. And that when Norman Osborn was defeated, Sentry turned into the Void and almost killed everybody, right? So it was nuts, right? He killed Loki. It was crazy. We did cover that. Siege was an amazing story at the end of Dark Reign. So it's enough to like freak out these cops. Initially, they try to call us bluff, but Bullseye is nothing if not cunning. Bullseye basically duping these guys really comes by way of just feeding on their fears, right? This idea that like, hey, Sentry's going to kill you all when he gets here. You need to let me go because I'm the only one that knows how to defeat him. And because the cops don't necessarily believe him, Bullseye starts to fake his death. His heart rate drops the whole 9 yards. So they break him out and they start using defibrillators. And they're like, okay, like tell us how to stop the Sentry. He's like, oh, I just made that up. Sentry's dead, just like you're about to be, and like kills the guys on the spot, right? So then at that point, the captain turns around with a gun, fires it, Bullseye blocks it with his handcuffs and frees himself. It ricochets back into the cop and kills him. And so at that point, Bullseye gets back to the city of New York. And that's when he realizes that Daredevil has effectively built up Shadowland. Now, here's the kicker about all this, right? Because Daredevil building Shadowland, we'll explain that here in a second, because there's a whole lot that kind of goes into it. But the Avengers don't necessarily know how to process this. One of the things to keep in mind is that because of the events of Dark Reign as they were transpiring, a lot was happening. That because this came off the heels of Civil War and Secret Invasion, the Superhero Registration Act was still in effect. So those superheroes who had not registered were operating underground. Iron Man had the absolute crap beat out of him by Norman Osborn during Dark Reign, and Captain America was dead. And so because of that, there really wasn't any traditional Avengers team operating in any meaningful capacity. And so because of this, when the band is back together, quote unquote, they're trying to figure out what to do about Matt. More so than that, when Iron Fist is talking to everybody, because he's a street level superhero, he's just kind of like, I've heard things. I've been hearing rumors about what's been going on in Hell's Kitchen, because ever since Matt came back here, he set up Shadowland, the cops have been run out of the area, there's been disappearances. People are just going missing. No one really knows what's happening out there. But more so than that, Matt has invoked the hand. Now, don't worry again, I'm not gonna leave you guys hanging because I gotta cover what happens next, man, because the fight between Bullseye and Daredevil is amazing. So here's the thing, right? Like this is so dope. It's the greatest Bullseye moment in the history of Marvel Comics. So Bullseye shows up here to Shadowland, right, intending to confront Daredevil and take Daredevil out. Now, here's the thing. When Daredevil appears, he has the entire hand at his disposal. This is a group of mystical ninjas. They can be resurrected from the dead. They're some of the most prodigious fighters in existence. When the hand comes after you, depending on the circumstance, they might send one ninja after you, which is more than enough to take out the average person. If it's someone like Wolverine, they'll send 500 ninjas after him at one time. Like, they'll just come pouring in droves. So if the hand wants you dead, you die. That's usually just the way that it is. And at the moment, Matt Murdock is the leader of them. He's running this whole thing. And what's kind of cool here is Bullseye understands the threat of the situation, and he's very cocky and doesn't seem to take it that seriously. The reason why is because of what happens next. So with all these ninjas that come chasing after him, he spends the whole time talking trash. And one of the things that you learn about why Daredevil hates Bullseye so much kind of feeds into the prequel of what had happened before Shadowland, which is that there came a point when Norman Osborn sent Bullseye after Daredevil in order to take him out. And that one of the things Bullseye had done was blown up an apartment building and a whole tenement block and killed like 117 people in one fell swoop. It was nuts. And so at this point, Daredevil harbors a huge amount of hatred for this guy. So for all the talking and all the trash that just goes on between the two of them, Daredevil just looks at Bullseye and is like, take him, right? And so it's like, it's cool, right? It's just like, take him, right? So at that point, all the ninja hands come flooding after this guy, and Bullseye holds his own against every one of them. It's amazing. It's always been my favorite moment for his character. And so when he takes all these guys on, the fact that he's able to hold his own is a testament to how prodigious of a fighter he is, because it's not as though he's barely scraping by. No, he's countering every move. He's holding his own against every single one of these guys and killing them all. And he successfully does. He kills every member of the Hand that Matt Murdock sends after him. And so at that point, you have Iron Fist and Luke Cage watching this whole thing go down. Because with Daredevil traditionally being a street level hero and Luke and Iron Fist being a street level hero, he's their friend. So the goal is to like talk to him, to figure out what's going on, to reason with him. But the more they watch this fight unfold, the more they realize Daredevil really is gone. Because as this goes back and forth between the two of them, Daredevil starts demonstrating a level of power that he doesn't traditionally have. But at the same time, Bullseye keeps goading him. Because when Matt finally jumps in, Bullseye's like, now that's more like it. And it's just back and forth and back and forth. Bullseye's taunting him, he's toying with him the whole time, and Matt Murdock finally gets the upper hand and dislocates his shoulder. And that's when Bullseye realized Matt's playing for keeps, because Matt literally says, but you're still just as deadly with the other hand, aren't you? And so literally, Bullseye goes to attack him, and Matt dislocates his other shoulder. So he's just standing there, neither arm is working. Matt ends up taking one of his sides, and at that point, Bullseye's like, wait a minute, no. Dude, you're not this kind of guy. The whole time, Luke Cage and Iron Fist are watching this, and they're like, oh my God, no, he's not. And he literally grabs it and stabs Bullseye through the chest. So the question has to be asked, what happened? What led Matt Murdock down this path where he's killing people? Okay, so the cool thing about Shadowland is that it's one of these stories where there is a prequel to it, but it honestly builds on the Matt Murdock mythos, going all the way back to like Daredevil Born Again by Frank Miller, and even some stories before that. The general gist behind Shadowland is that it's all the trauma that Matt has experienced catching up to him. The immediate catalyst to all of this is that Matt Murdock was basically brought in to become leader of the Hand, because the previous leader of the Hand was Elektra, with Elektra having basically been killed at that point in time, and the whole revelation that she was actually a Skrull, which led into the events of Secret Invasion. The Hand was leaderless, so they ended up bringing in both Matt Murdock and Kingpin, the idea being that one of them would become leader of the Hand. Initially, Matt Murdock rejected it, but once he realized Kingpin was extended the same offer, Matt Murdock ended up taking up leadership of the Hand. The idea was that it's better to have someone lead them and keep them over there than to have someone like Kingpin lead them and use them on the people of the city of New York, because with the Hand, he'd be able to rule this place with an iron fist. The problem is that because of the events of Dark Reign, Matt Murdock ended up adopting the mentality that he should be using the Hand for his own ends, bringing the Hand in and then using them as a way to basically end the impact of Norman Osborn, potentially even defeating Norman Osborn during the events of Dark Reign. Now, I would go further, but if I do, it'll spoil the ending of the story. And so what this does is this transitions over to Moon Knight. And some of your favorite heroes outside of the Avengers are going to be a part of the story because it's amazing. So the thing about Moon Knight is at this point, he's using the Jake Lockley persona. And he has this really cool kind of monologue here where he says, Shadowland, he calls it, an honest-to-God castle built right in the middle of Hell's Kitchen. It's a declaration of intent, right on the block that Bullseye blew up. Daredevil's got everyone running scared. He kicked out the cops, declared martial law. Now his ninjas rule the streets. And they call me crazy. The small-time crooks have all cleared out, headed east side. All the smart ones anyway, but the rest of them, the ones the Hand already took, nobody knows what happened to them. It's like Hell's Kitchen just swallowed them whole. And not just crooks, cops too. I'm gonna find them, so let's see what it takes to get a little attention around here. So he steps out of his cab with a baseball bat, smashes the window, and it draws the attention of the Hand because he's like, let's get started, right? So the Hand immediately show up and basically subdue him and take him away the way that he planned for it to be done. And so following that, it switches over to Iron Fist and Luke Cage in the soup kitchen. That does become important, somewhat of a plot device later on. They don't know that it's significant. As far as they're concerned, it's just a couple of crazy guys who were getting into a fight. right? But Kingpin shows up here. He also shows up with Lady Bullseye. Now, Lady Bullseye is a character who was introduced in Marvel Comics as a girl who was supposed to be sold into slavery. Bullseye showed up on an unrelated mission and basically, took out a whole bunch of the crime bosses that were going to sell her in the whole 9 yards. Anyway, she was inspired by Bullseye. And so she was ultimately trained by a guy named Itzo, who we'll talk about here in a little bit. But she's seemingly every bit as capable as Bullseye is. I don't know if she's absolutely 1-to-1, maybe like 75% is good, right? But she's good enough that she's here as essentially the bodyguard of Wilson Fisk. And so as Fisk is talking to Luke Cage and Iron Fist, the whole idea here is this is a situation that needs to be remedied. The enemy of my enemy is my friend. You guys know that Daredevil is in a place where he's far more extreme than he used to be. The city needs to be liberated from him, and I need to be liberated from the influence of Daredevil and his control over Hell's Kitchen, because it belongs to me. So if no other reason than that, we find ourselves in a tenuous alliance. And so one of the things that happens is that Kingpin, sitting down with Lady Bullseye, basically accesses a kind of scroll. And one of the things that Lady Bullseye says is, be careful of what you're doing. He says, you did well in retrieving the Black Scroll, Lady Bullseye. And she asks, have you any idea how many temple ninja I had to slay in order to do so? The response of Kingpin here, right? The hand do guard their secrets closely, but that's why I have you. And so he says, the ritual has been prepared in accordance with the scroll. All that remains is the final incantation. And the Zugai Katsu warrior will be mine to command. Now she warns him, right? She says, this is one of the hand's most ancient enemies, one to be feared, and yet you think you wield him like a child's plaything. And the response of Fisk is one of the coldest lines that I've ever heard. He's like, all men must bend to my will, and even he was a man once. And so in turn, he basically utters the incantation in the scroll. Nothing seems to happen, and then there's a noise, right? Somebody approaching. The window shatters, and we don't actually see who it is initially. Instead, it's just a flaming boot. So you guys can figure it out pretty quickly, right? And so the question that's kind of asked by this guy is like, what is going on here, right? And initially Wilson Fisk responds. He says, Ancient One, hear me now. A great injustice has been done to this city. Voices cry out in the darkness. And the response of this guy is like, okay, and can you spare me the masterpiece theater talk, fat man? Voices crying out for what? And the response of Fisk? Vengeance. And so at that point, you switch over to Luke Cage and the other members of the Heroes for Hire. And they basically show up here meeting with White Tiger. The idea being that White Tiger is effectively a servant working alongside Matt Murdock, along with Black Tarantula. There is a whole history behind them. Truth to tell, they're not overly important to the context of the story outside of the fact that like they're just here with Murdock. Although I will say here in a little bit, there is something that goes down with White Tiger that is kind of important. But one of the things Matt Murdock had done is he had issued a kind of invitation, right? His argument being Bullseye alone showed up and killed so many of the Hand's ninjas. And while they can be revived, that takes time. But more so than that, it demonstrated that one very capable member of the superhero and supervillain community, who doesn't really even have any powers to speak of, was able to overcome all his forces. And so his argument is, we need costumed heroes on our side. We need people who will come to our cause. I don't care if they're heroes. I don't care if they're villains. Send a message. All are invited. And so when Luke Cage and the Heroes for Hire show up, they had pitched the idea to White Tiger that they were here to work alongside Matt. But of course, that's not the case. And they reveal as much, right? They tell him like, well, we kind of lied in order to get here. But listen, man, this is not who you are. Like, I don't know what's going on, but you've become so extreme. You even went so far as to kill Bullseye. And I mean, yeah, he had it coming, but the fact that you did it was just so crazy. Like, you don't do that, Matt. And his response here is just cold indifference. Bullseye was a mad dog. I put him down for the greater good. And that's where Colleen Wing is kind of like, so you're the guy who gets to decide that now. Right? You're the one who gets to decide who gets put down, who gets to live, who gets to die. And she says, what happened to you? You used to believe in justice. You're a lawyer, for God's sake. And his response, justice is what we make it. And in turn, Shang-Chi chimes in and says, there's right and there is wrong. This is wrong, and you know this. And so the response of Matt is, I don't need lectures. Is this some kind of an intervention? Why can't you see what it is that I'm trying to do here, what I'm trying to build? They put the Green Goblin in charge of national security. They made Bullseye an Avenger. They spat on everything we ever fought for. And now I'm the bad guy? And the response of Shang-Chi? Yes. That really is the case. And then like the whole conversation is interrupted because somebody says, hey, can I just add on a personal note, the whole black costume thing, it never ends well. Trust me on this because Spider-Man's here. And he even tells him, hey man, so like your sentries aren't very effective because I just kind of walked in. So just so you know, it was pretty easy for me to gain access. But at that point, you switch back over to Moon Knight, right? Jake Lockley. And as he's here, he's really just kind of a prisoner among the members of the Hand. But again, wanting to get caught, he ends up spitting up a lockpicking kit and then breaks himself loose with the intention of going through and figuring out what's going on, what's happening in this place, why are people going missing? But in the middle of all that, there's a loud roaring sound. And that's where one of the cops who's caught, they're just like, what in the name of God is that noise? And another guy's like, it sounds like a damn dinosaur. And the response of Moon Knight, it's worse than that. It's an engine. Because the person summoned by Kingpin is the Ghost Rider. And that's the thing, man, dude. Ghost Rider is kind of amazing in this story. You don't see a whole lot of him, but he does have this crazy moment here in a little bit. Because when that happens and he appears here on the scene, he immediately starts going after members of the Hand. But it's really more just curiosity for why he's here than anything else. He's kind of sent here by Kingpin, but there's a little more going on than initially meets the eye. And so switching back to Matt Murdock and him confronting all the members of the Avengers, or at least those street level heroes who were here, that he's told by the members of the Hand were under attack. It came from below down in the dungeons. And Matt Murdock assumes that this whole thing was a ruse. Spider-Man, the heroes for hire, they were here as a distraction. So in this kind of irrational behavior, he starts accusing them, right? Like, you guys came here to trick me. And so that's when he tells all the members of the Hand, and he literally says, take them dead or alive. While the fight's going on between Moon Knight and Ghost Rider and members of the Hand, Moon Knight kind of chimes in and literally just like starts to take off. He was like, this is not any kind of a game and I'm not playing, right? Like more like I'm the one who's being played. And that's what I aim to find out. Who's manipulating me here, right? And so after the Hand members are defeated, Ghost Rider ends up bailing out. And at that point, you switch back over to the fight between Matt Murdock, the Hand, and all these other superheroes. And he says, consider my ban on killing hereby lifted. Slay everyone. If they die, we can bring them back and they'll come back as servants and members of the Hand. It's irrelevant. But that's when everybody starts to realize something much bigger is going on here. Because when Danny Rand fires up his Iron Fist, Matt Murdock jumps at an impossible height, enough to dodge it, and comes crashing back down, enough to kind of incapacitate them. But for them, that's impossible. Matt Murdock has enhanced sight and enhanced senses, but like, that's it. He doesn't have super strength, super speed, but he's moving in ways that indicate that he does, that somehow he's been enhanced. And so even while Spider-Man faces off against Matt, that Matt shows these incredible abilities that aren't readily available to him, right? That he's able to bob and weave between Spider-Man's spider sense. It's not enough to overcome it, but it is enough to momentarily dodge Spider-Man. And that's when Peter realizes like something really is going on here because, I mean, Matt's cool, but like, I mean, you know, like Daredevil though, right? I mean, he's not on my level. It doesn't happen that way. And so in the midst of all this, Typhoid Mary appears. Now, for those of you guys who are not familiar with Typhoid Mary, she is important to the story, but not because of her powers. But the nature of her powers is that she's a mutant and she struggles with multiple personalities, dissociative identity disorder, and that different personalities have different powers. Now, she's only got a few personalities, so she's nowhere near somebody like Legion. But one of those personalities has the ability to manifest fire, and that's why she tells Peter, burn. And then immediately you have Misty Knight that jumps on him trying to get the flames out. But the reality here is that through this whole fight, the walls are closing in fast, that the Hand ninjas keep increasing in number, that the heroes can only hold out for so long, they're all being incapacitated. And so literally Matt just says, bring me their heads. And then an explosion goes off, right? Like just the whole wall blows right open. And who's standing there to save everybody? The Punisher. Frank Castle arrives on the scene, and it's amazing because this guy just starts spraying down in every direction. I mean, this dude opens fire, no quarter given, and no questions asked. It's amazing, right? So this guy offering a distraction allows the superheroes to get out of there as fast as they can. In that moment, Peter Parker just webs up the exit and they finally make their escape. Not only that, the city, right, Hell's Kitchen is falling apart because one of the things that's happening is they're being influenced by what it is that's going on with Matt and Shadowland. So again, like we'll talk about that here in a little while because it all sort of begins to tie together. And so at that moment, Typhoid Mary has a kind of sit down with Matt Murdock where he's asking for an update on everything that's going on. And he realizes that because of Mark Spector, all the prisoners in the sewer have been freed, that the superheroes got away, that Matt is no better off than he was before. And so what he realizes is that they're all going to come back. And when they do, they're going to come for him. And he's trying to figure out who it is that they can get, right? Who it is that they can bring in that can help him in this quest of overcoming the superheroes and securing his control over Hell's Kitchen. Now, of course, Moon Knight's watching all of this unfold, but in turn, he says, nevertheless, the superheroes, technically Punisher, slaughtered dozens of our foot soldiers. I was a fool to think heroes would ever join me. What I need, and then it clicks. It occurs to him, and he's like, Mary, come with me and bring a shovel. And so they head out to a graveyard, right? They start digging up graves. And so at that moment, she's like, I mean, this is crazy. And like, believe me, I know crazy. And the response of Matt, I acted rashly. Killing him was a waste of material. And she's like, material? Like, what do you mean? And he says, his skills, his focus, I don't know why I didn't think of it sooner. He'll be the perfect champion. And Mary asks him, like, how do you know you could ever trust him? He'd cut your throat the moment your back is turned. And the response of Matt, no, when we bring him back, he will be loyal and he will serve me just like any loyal servant will do, because the person he's talking about bringing back is Bullseye. And so at that moment, Elektra appears, right? She says, literally, I heard you were looking for fighters, but you must be desperate if you're recruiting from the ranks of the dead, digging up graves. So believe me, Matthew, I know what I'm talking about. I was one of them, right? Like, she literally died. And so at that moment, with the superheroes kind of recovering out in Harlem, the question is like, I mean, what do we do, right? I mean, Matt Murdock has really turned the bend here, right? This guy is extreme. He's willing to kill us, and we're some of his closest friends. And that's where Punisher says basically what everybody's thinking. You guys can toy with how to fix Matt Murdock all you want to, but the reality here is I know bent and I know broken. That guy's broken. The only thing that we can do is we're going to have to kill Daredevil. And so that's when you see the introduction of Ezo. Now, Ezo is a very, very old guy, right? He's been around for quite some time. And in fact, he's the one that kind of sent Matt on the path of basically potentially being the leader for the Hand, the role that Matt accepted, and that led him here. More so than that, what Ezo reveals to everybody is the reason why Matt seems to have impossible levels of strength that transcend anything that any normal human is capable of, is that because of all the torment that he's experienced over the course of his life, all the loss that he's had to endure, all the terrible things that have happened to him, it made him a perfect host for the person that the Hand serves, or the being that the Hand serves, a being known as the Beast. Now, the Beast is somewhat enigmatic in Marvel Comics, but the way it works is like this. So in the Elektra miniseries, one of the things that we learned is that the Hand was formed by a guy named Kagenobu Yoshioka, by basically uniting what were in effect peasant tribes around Japan. Initially, they just kind of came together to practice martial arts and to basically protect themselves against the forces of the ruling class within Japan. As time progressed, Kagenobu Yoshioka died, and when that happened, the Hand started to succumb slowly to the influence of the Beast, this kind of demonic being that exists out there, leading the Hand to its current form. Ezo was one of the very early members of the Hand and then defected when they started going dark, and ultimately was a founding member of the Cast, the organization that is kind of the antithesis to the Beast. And so one of the things that goes on, and kind of tying into this idea of White Tiger and Black Tarantula, one of the things that takes place is that Black Tarantula has been increasingly questioning Matt Murdock, that he is immune to the influence of what's happening with Matt, and what's really taking place across Hell's Kitchen is that the influence of the Beast is actually spreading across the entirety of the city, or at least across Hell's Kitchen itself. That's why everybody's succumbing to like insanity and anger and losing their minds and all that. Black Tarantula is not impacted by that, but with him questioning Matt, his loyalty isn't really where it needs to be. And so a kind of conflict ensues between himself and White Tiger, where White Tiger says, like, we cannot compromise now. Lord Daredevil has given the order, looters are to be executed. And that's where he's like, that's insane, right? Like, it's one thing when the city's kind of going nuts. It's one thing when he's trying to bring superheroes into his tribe, or whatever you want to call it, under his influence, and asking them to do it willingly. It's another when he says all these innocent people out there who are succumbing to all this darkness and are tearing things up, that we have to kill them all. He says, look, man, there's something wrong with him, and you know that. He says, Matt hasn't been himself since you returned from Japan. Some bad voodoo's gotten into him, and it's spreading. And that's where she says, of course it's spreading. That's the whole point. And she stabs him and kicks him off the building, right? Literally just like throws him out there. But focusing back on the main Shadowland story itself, with Elektra joining Daredevil and Typhoid Mary and bringing the body of Bullseye back to the temple so they can begin the resurrection process, there are a few members of the Hand who reveal they're the only ones that know about this place. And of course, Elektra kills them to keep the secret quiet. And then as she's making her way through the sewers, you end up finding out she's a double agent, right? That she's pretending to be on the side of Matt Murdock, but is actually on the side of everybody else. Luke Cage, Iron Fist, Punisher, Spider-Man, Shang-Chi, but they've also brought in Wolverine. Now they did that because Wolverine has a lot of history with the Hand. He's fought alongside the Hand, been used by the Hand, offered his training to members of the Hand. There's a lot that's gone on with his character and that group. And so when he's here, one of the things he teases and kind of toys with is the idea that, like, if it comes down to killing Matt, he'll do it. And he'll do it with no scruples whatsoever. And so what Elektra provides them is a kind of map of the temple. And it's like, we can gain access here, here, and here, and here. And at that point, it's just battle strategy. And so switching back over to the resurrection process, where Bullseye is in the process of being brought back, Elektra fires off an arrow and kills one of the guys that's bringing Bullseye back. And then at that moment, Matt realizes something bigger is going on, right? He's been betrayed. And so once he realizes everybody else is here, another massive fight unfolds. And he's like, I've had enough, right? This is done. If you have to, like, kill them. I don't care what you do. Kill them. We'll bring them back. It doesn't matter. These guys are a hassle. More than that, he starts to realize that having a direct frontal attack like this is a silly thing for these guys to do. He's known them for years. He knows what they're capable of. This doesn't make any sense. Then he figures out it's all a diversion. And that what ends up happening is Frank Castle behind him throws a stun grenade. And in that moment, it's enough to overwhelm the senses of Matt. When he turns around, Wolverine's got his claws popped and goes to kill him. But Matt doesn't die. And that's where Wolverine is just like, what in the world is going on, right? Like, it's one thing to be possessed by a demon, but like, this guy's not possessed by a demon. He is the beast. Like, he's literally mind, body, and spirit controlled by this thing. And that's where Matt starts to kind of shift and deform, switch around, and turn into this like devil-like creature. And as he continues to fight, Spider-Man jumps in. And like along the way, he's bobbing and weaving and dodging all of Spider-Man's attack, moving at such a speed that Spider-Man can't really counter directly. Now, of course, it is Spider-Man, so of course, he's not necessarily going to lose this fight. And so one of the things that happens is that because of his spider sense, he figures out where Matt is going to be dodging to, and then just kind of tries to web him up. It's not enough to really defeat him, but it is enough to momentarily incapacitate him. That allows everybody to dogpile on, and then they're like, we will kill you if we have to. And at that point, he says, there is no more Matt Murdock. Stop calling me that. There's only the beast. And like morphing into this demonic form, he reveals what he truly looks like when he's possessed. And so at this point, all hell breaks loose, because what you do is you pick up with Ghost Rider showing up here to where like Matt Murdock and everybody are fighting. And so once he arrives on the scene with all the superheroes taken out, you would expect Ghost Rider to be able to take Matt out almost instantly. Instead, because Matt is channeling the power of the beast, and because Ghost Rider isn't quite prepared for this, Matt overpowers him. And in fact, the hellfire of the Ghost Rider doesn't work at all because of the power of the beast. It's a demonic entity born and bred in this very hellfire. So in turn, it seizes the flames from Ghost Rider, absorbs them all, and just leaves his body there. Not only that, Foggy Nelson has like been making his way up to the facility in order to try to talk Matt Murdock down. And where White Tiger is the one that catches him, she's like, I found this guy like just kind of roaming through this place. Do you want me me to kill him? And the response of Matt is no, right? I want to kill this guy myself. But when Foggy starts to talk to him, he's momentarily able to bring him back. And what this establishes is that Matt is not fully lost. And with everybody else witnessing this, they come to realize that exact same thing. And so that's when an attack is launched. What Iron Fist does is he channels his chi energy and literally hits the beast with it. Now, it's not enough to defeat him. There's no way that it would be. But one of the things that Iron Fist says when he's asked the question, like, do you really think that would defeat me? He says no, right? Honestly, that's the thing about chi. It's a life force. That which destroys can also create. The blow was not meant to harm you. It was meant to heal. Wakey, wakey, Matt, and that's where Matt Murdock starts to come back to his normal self. And so in that moment, you realize that what's going on inside his own mind is he succumbed to fear. He succumbed to all the fear that he could possibly have. That what the beast has been doing is using his subconscious fears against him. Fears of not being accepted, fears of being too weak, fears of failing his father and never living up to the man that he felt like his father was. All these fears are being used against him by the beast. And so when Elektra shows up, she tells him that the darkness is within you, Matthew, and you are within the darkness, trapped within your own self-pity. The beast is using your own subconscious fears against you, your rage, your guilt, your blindness to every point of view but your own. But you are not a child, and only you can free yourself. And where he says, like, I'm terrified, right? I'm scared. I don't know what to do. The response of Elektra, be a man without fear. And so Matt takes this sword and just says, please tell them I'm sorry, and like stabs himself and kind of symbolically ends the beast's influence over himself. And so in turn, the beast is basically forced out, and Matt Murdock is seemingly believed to be dead. Not only that, because the beast isn't part of anything anymore, all the people within the city basically stop succumbing to the influence of the beast, right? They're no longer impacted by what's happening. They go back to their normal selves. But the kicker about this is that Matt's not actually dead, because as everybody's leaving, which strangely enough, I guess they were all perfectly content with just leaving Matt Murdock's corpse in the middle of this whole thing, right? I guess maybe they really hated him that much that Foggy turns around and is like, where's Matt? Not only that, Elektra's gone, and Elektra realizes Matt had taken off and basically thrown the Daredevil mask to the side. And so what it does is it switches over and kind of gives us this little bit of an ending where with Matt Murdock out of the picture, because Kingpin was supposed to be the leader of the Hand, seemingly Kingpin is now its new leader. So with that being said, guys, we're going to bring this to an end. Let me know what you guys think down in the comments section. Hopefully you guys enjoyed this video. If you did, drop a like. Thank you all for watching, and I will catch you all later. Peace.